We are about to be entering a very active winter period throughout the month of December. What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. All right, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have a lot to discuss with you today. We have our winter storm that's currently moving through the Great Lakes and about to enter parts of the mid-Atlantic and northeastern United States. And then we have round 2 that's going to start developing a little bit starting around tomorrow. And then after that, we have a few more things that we're going to be discussing in terms of potential winter storms. We might be seeing some more snow in a few days after that. It's just going to be one of those situations where we're just going to see snow system after snow system after snow system move through much of the United States. So we're going to be talking about all of that right here, and we're going to go ahead and dive right into it right now. Starting off right here, this is the North American model for you guys right here. What we got, taking a quick gander at, is we have a lot of snowfall going on in parts of Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, New York, and even in parts of Canada as well as the system starts to move out of the United States. Expected to do that by the end of the day today, at least in terms of the impacts. But at the same time, we have another low pressure system starting to develop over here in Colorado, Utah, Wyoming. That is going to be our second snow system, and that might bring some pretty significant impacts to some areas in the Midwest, the Mid-Atlantic, and New England. So we're going to want to watch out for that. You have this snow system starting to slowly get its act together, have a bit of a low pressure system starting to develop. It kind of merges with this low pressure system that's developing in the Gulf region right here. That could generate some thunderstorms, some pretty heavy rain, and mixed precipitation is possible for parts of Arkansas in Tennessee over here. And then you have the snowfall really starting to ramp up for parts of Illinois, especially in Indiana, western Ohio, and southeastern Michigan over here. You're going to want to pay attention to that. The snowfall just gets heavier and heavier and heavier. Ohio really gets the bulk of the snow for the Midwest right here, going into Pennsylvania, and then New York into parts of Vermont, New Hampshire, and then pretty much bringing a lot of snowfall, especially for the mountains as the system starts to exit. Then you have another Alberta Clipper system that's kind of to the north, but is bringing a lot of snowfall for Wisconsin, Michigan, potentially as far south as the Chicago area right there. It's just going to be snow system after snow system after snow system based on these models right here, and that's something you're going to want to pay attention to. Taking a quick gander at your snow accumulation right here for the snow system right here, Here's the deal we got. So let's go ahead and start with the Midwest. If you're in the Midwest, you're looking at quite a bit of snowfall. You're looking at an additional potentially up to 3 to 5 inches of snow from what you already got from the previous snow system. Now, granted, if you're in southern Illinois, in areas south that freezing line, a lot of that is melted in the rain area. But if you're in Chicago, if you're in Detroit, if you're in Grand Rapids, that's just additional accumulation for you guys that you're going to have to deal with. That's just going to only exacerbate some of the travel problems that we have for a lot of these regions. We're going to want to pay attention to this moving forward. Ohio, especially in areas in southeastern Ohio, could see 6+ inches of snow according to the North American model right here. We'll show you some other models as well, just to kind of give you some context and to give you a fuller picture. But looking at the Mid-Atlantic, it's kind of that rain snow line moving well north of D.C., Baltimore, Philly, and those areas. But look at the snowfall we get for Scranton, Willis, Barks area, looking at potentially up to a foot of snow. In some parts of New York, you're seeing potentially close to 2 feet of snow, over 22 inches. As a matter of fact. And then in parts of Vermont, New Hampshire, especially the mountainous regions, close to 30 inches of snow is possible with this snow system, and you're going to want to pay attention to that, especially too if you're all the way up to Maine as well. Now, if we show you the 0Z from the NAM, it was a bit further to the north, and it really did bring up to 30+ inches of snow, especially in New Hampshire and Vermont in the more mountainous regions. It has kind of decreased since then, but that possibility is still there, especially for those regions right there. So if you're tuning in from New England, you're in Vermont, New Hampshire, you're going to want to pay attention to this very closely, especially to if you're in Maine. Even on the coastal areas, you're going to want to watch out for that as well. Just for some context, we're going to go ahead and give you the European forecast as well. European, not as aggressive as the NAM, especially in the mountains, I would say, but it is pushing it further to the south towards DC, Baltimore, New York, Philadelphia, and Boston. So there is kind of a bit of a disagreement in terms of where that rain snow line will align. If you show the GFS right here, GFS is definitely the most aggressive in terms of the amount of snowfall outside, closest to the cities over here, closest to the big metroplexes right here. But you're going to want to watch out for that. But the NAM's really going off on a limb, I would say. The rest of the models don't really show like 30-plus inches of snow from this, I will say. So if the NAM is anywhere close to being accurate, that is going to be your worst-case scenario, in my opinion. And that's something that we're going to want to pay attention to. So now we're going to go ahead and show some more long-range stuff. We have the GEM GDPS pulled up. We'll also show a little bit of the GFS and European as well, just to give you some context and get an idea of what may be happening. So starting off, we have the GEM GDPS with this new snow system moving through in the 4th and the 5th right here for parts of the Great Lakes. Then you have another snow system on December 5th that's going to start getting its act together, potentially bringing even more snowfall to the Midwest over here, although it does accelerate in speed and really starts to push out of the U.S. by the 6th of December. But still, some potential heavy snow and even mixed precipitation is possible for parts of the metroplexes that we're dealing with: DC, Baltimore, New York, Philly, those areas right there. I will say, though, the GEM GDPS does have a tendency to kind of overestimate the inversion in the upper parts of the atmosphere, so that is something that needs to be taken with a grain of salt. Another snow system moves through, another clipper, but my goodness, look at just how active this is becoming. And it's not just one snow system, it's multiple snow systems coming in. It seems like almost every other day at this point. Taking a quick gander at the GEM GDPS right here, showing the GFS just for some context. Yeah, it's definitely showing more of that, although it does have a tendency to be a bit more of a warm bias compared to the GEM GDPS, which has more of a tendency to be a cold bias at the surface. So we'll have to watch out for those. But then the GFS, more snowfall for parts of New England, more snowfall for parts of the Great Lakes. It's just every other day, depending on where you're at right here, and that's something you're just going to want to pay attention to moving forward. And lastly, we'll go ahead and show you the European as well, and we'll go ahead and show you your precip as well. It doesn't show like the precipitation type, unfortunately, but even the European, you're looking at some potential snowfall on Friday for parts of the Midwest right here. This was something that kind of flew under the radar until yesterday, so that's definitely something that you're going to want to watch and want to pay attention to, but it does move quickly out. You have another snow system moving through as well. Also some potential rainfall for parts of the south. Look at the European right here. Another clipper system that just really nosedives all the way down to Kentucky and Pennsylvania and the areas in between. This is going to be quite the active winter. You just see a lot of troughs, a lot of ridges really starting to ramp up right here, and that's something that you're going to want to pay attention to long term. What's the total snow accumulation going to look like, Patrick? You haven't talked too much about it. You've looked at the tracks of it. Well, let's go ahead and take a quick gander. You have this snow system that's getting its act together. Then you have the snow system on the 5th that could bring some snowfall, some pretty significant snowfall as well, again, for parts of the Chicago area, just areas that just keep getting impacted, hit after hit after hit after hit with this. And this is just a reoccurring theme that we're noticing with this right here. You're just noticing more and more and more and more of these snow systems just really just pummeling a lot of areas. Let's go ahead and zoom in just for the Midwest, for example, just to try to extrapolate. So that snow system on the first and all of that, 3 to 5 inches. We've already went over this. The snow system on the 5th over here is another potential of 5 to 7 inches of snow on top of that. You're going to want to pay attention to that, and even in parts of St. Louis that could be on the southern side of this, you're seeing another 3 to 4 inches of snowfall on Friday night with this. And then another snow system, it's going to be an Alberta Clipper, mainly a couple extra inches with that. And then another system that really nosedives down there. It brings potentially another, potentially couple inches of snow to Chicago, but for parts of central Illinois, up to 6 inches is possible with this right here. And then another snow system starts to get its act together, brings potentially another 3 to 5 inches in parts of central, southern Illinois, eastern Missouri, going all the way to southern Indiana and Kentucky as well. So just really just snow system after snow system, just hammering after hammering that we're going to be seeing all the way through December 15th. Keep in mind, this is one model run. You're going to want to take it with a grain of salt, but we'll have to pay attention to it because the pattern is still consistent. You're just seeing trough after trough after trough after trough, and then you're seeing Arctic blasts just following those troughs as well. That's just going to keep the temperature relatively cold. So overall, pretty active month for the month of December at least. Now we'll go ahead and show you the GFS just for context to see what they're going with as well. GFS is kind of similar in regards to where they track, not as aggressive in terms of the snowfall unless you're in a state like Michigan right here. If you're in Detroit, Ann Arbor, this is the GFS wants you guys to get 15 to 17 inches of snow. I don't know how realistic that is. We'll have to pay attention to it. Just take it with a grain of salt. Northwest Indiana getting 16 inches of snow. Unless there are significant amounts of lake effect affiliated with that, which I don't think there are, you're going to want to pay attention to it. But overall, take it with a pinch of salt. This is, I believe, the system for December 7th, actually. What's the GFS going for with that? Yeah, it's bringing pretty significant snowfall to the parts of the Chicago area, but ground zero is kind of the Michiana area over here as well, pretty much going from before that, maybe getting 8 inches of snow to after that, in some regions, potentially up to 20 inches of snow. Take it with a grain of salt. We are going to want to pay attention to it. We don't exactly know what the synoptics are going to look like. We just have a general idea of how they may pan out. But my goodness, things really continue to escalate across much of the United States, going all the way out to mid-December. Just the GFS is really just ramping up too on the mountain snow as well. That's going to be interesting to see how that pans out, especially if we see more Colorado lows and Alberta clippers, if we see a scenario where more of those nosedive into the United States. So that's also something to pay attention to as well. But at least for the next 10 days, looking at the GM-GDPS, generally just still, even 10 days out, wanting significant amounts of snowfall across New England, across the Mid-Atlantic, across the Midwest. Those three areas, I say like a broken record, but those three areas are getting the heaviest snowfall, are getting the hardest hit. This is kind of how it was back in 2013, 2014, and 2014 and 2015 as well. The analogs are closer to 2013, 2014, minus the cold. It's not going to be as cold as it was in 2013 and 2014, but it's going to be as active as it was. And as long as that cold air stays below freezing, you're going to see snow system after snow system after snow system. And this just only exacerbates that situation right there. So that's what you're looking at with your snowfall. The other half of the equation we're going to need to talk about is the Arctic air. Yes, there is some Arctic air that's moving through parts of the U.S. We're going to show the European just for context. You have it moving through much of the United States. That's going to remain freezing in much of the Midwest throughout today. Then it's going to continue to dive all the way down to the deep south as well. Temperatures in the Chicago area, as well as in parts of potentially Ann Arbor, Detroit, Lansing, in Michigan, get into the lower teens and even single digits in some areas as well. And then it continues, it kind of starts to die down a little bit. Then you have another polar plunge moving through much of the U.S. It kind of is it's more significant in a more concentrated area in Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, where temperatures are in the low single digits, sometimes going below 0 Fahrenheit. right here as a high pressure system moves through the region right here. It's just trough after trough after trough after trough that moves through. And then you have another big plunge moving through by the time we get to December 8th. So if we do see that snow system on the 5th or the 7th right here, that's definitely going to cause some problems, especially with the Arctic plunge right after that. That's going to just keep the snow there, and it's going to keep the roads frozen. And the worst part about these temperatures too is if we get to the point where like -5 or even around 0 or even like 10 degrees Fahrenheit, the salt does not work. The salt has a temperature and pretty much a physical limitation to how warm it has to be and how cold it has to get for it to work. That is pretty much the situation we're dealing with right here. And by and large, this is quite the crazy situation that we're dealing with. And then as we get to the 10th, things start to calm down, and then nope, they start to ramp back up in terms of the Arctic cold. It's just concentrated in the Midwest and parts of the Mid-Atlantic throughout the month of December. That is just crazy right here, just plain crazy how this is panning out right here. And that's just something that you're going to want to pay attention to. And this just also exacerbates the points I'm trying to make. It looks like for a lot of people, it's going to stay well below freezing when these snow systems do hit. And the time it does get warm, it's the prelude to another snow system that hits. So it's kind of a crazy situation that we're dealing with right here. And it's just keeps on going. This is not just for the first couple of weeks. This is also through the rest of December as well. CFS makes that perfectly clear. Even by the time we get to the 18th, a lot of areas in the upper Midwest really get cold from this right here. And yes, this is 850 millibar temperatures, but the thing you need to keep in mind is these temperatures definitely do translate quite a bit down to the surface. And this also kind of shows you your trough and your ridge situation. Look at this. December 21st. Now, this is, I will say, for almost 500 hours out, but we're seeing -20 degrees Celsius, 850 temperatures. That is below freezing and the upper levels, all the way down to the Texas Panhandle. I don't know if that's going to be set in stone. We have a lot of things to get through, but this just shows you just how active and how cold this pattern is right here. And then by the time we get to Christmas, some areas are going to be pretty cold and pretty chilly, and this is a potential pattern right here where a lot more people this year could get a white Christmas compared to what we saw previously, because before it was somewhat too warm. It was mainly concentrated in a few areas. People were saying, oh, white Christmases are over and all of that. But this year, it looks like a lot more people, particularly in those borderline areas like St. Louis, Indianapolis, and areas in Kentucky like Louisville, there is a greater chance because of this analog right here where you do get a white Christmas. Now, don't quote me on that. We don't know everything, but we do know that because of these temperature analogs and just how because of the nature of these troughs and these ridges that are going to be building up, you're going to have a situation where it's more active, and because of that activity and that temperature on top of that, that's going to equate to more snow potential. So that's something to pay attention to. And even as we get towards the new year of 2026, you have another big plunge on New Year's Eve, and then going all the way to start on January 2026, that is how things continue to ramp up. Obviously, nothing is set in stone. We're going to want to pay attention to it. It's 700 to 800 hours out at this point. We don't know. Things can change in a day, but ultimately, the analogs we are seeing and the consistency of just the nature of how cold this is going to be is really concerning to me. Not just because, oh, that's going to equate to more snow, but because during Christmas time, there's a lot of traveling. Pretty much from Thanksgiving to Christmas, that's our biggest travel season. And the amount of traveling that's going to be happening, that's going to be hindered by these snow systems. In fact, the Thanksgiving snowstorm that hit the Midwest caused a lot of accidents. It caused a lot of problems for a lot of people. There was a 54-car pileup at one point right there. So just the impacts of this is what concerns me, especially because this is our travel season right here. This is the busiest time of the year to travel. And those are all factors that we're going to want to pay attention to here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. The point I'm trying to make is this. It doesn't matter how much snow you're going to get. What matters is how bad the impacts are going to be. And based on these analogs, we're going to be seeing a lot of impacts, and you need to be watching the weather very closely for the next month or so. I would argue for the whole winter, because this, in my opinion, is probably just the start of it. And we're going to keep you updated on all the information we have, and we'll keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel once that comes out. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. The goal, as always, is to get more people engaged with weather. If you'd like to help out, hang out, ask us some questions, or just want to chill and kind of have a little bit of fun, feel free to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that is in the end screen. We'd really appreciate if you did that. Also, screw the Burger King commercials. I absolutely do not like them. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.